What would you do if your child disappeared? Not ran away, not got lost in a crowd, not wandered too far down the street. Disappeared. One moment she was there, laughing, breathing, alive. Her voice filling the air the way only a child's voice can light effortless. Completely unaware of how fragile that moment really was. And the next moment, nothing. No footsteps, no cry, no goodbye. Just silence where a child used to be. Most people, when they imagine this situation from a safe distance, believe they know what they would do. They say they would stay calm. They say they would trust the police, trust the system, trust that the truth will eventually come to the surface. They say these things because it is comfortable to say them, because the alternative is too dark to think about. But here is what no one tells you. When it is your child, when it is your blood, your world, the single most important thing you have ever held in your arms, something changes inside you. Something old and animal and completely beyond reason rises up from a place you didn't even know existed. It doesn't care about procedure. It doesn't care about law. It doesn't care about what is right or what is wrong or what kind of person you thought you were before this moment. It only cares about one thing: finding them. And what happens to a man who follows that instinct all the way to its darkest possible end is the story we are about to tell. It was Thanksgiving Day, a holiday built for warmth, for gratitude, for the smell of roasting meat and the sound of football from another room and children running through hallways that feel too small but somehow exactly right. The year was 2013. The place, a small quiet town in Pennsylvania. The kind of town that doesn't make the news. The kind of place where people wave at each other from driveways and leave their doors unlocked at night because nothing bad has ever happened here. At least, nothing that anyone remembers. Two families shared that day together. They were neighbors, yes, but more than that. They were the kind of friends that years build slowly and carefully. They had eaten at each other's tables. They had borrowed each other's tools. Their children had grown up side by side, the way children do in places like this, naturally, without effort, like two plants growing from the same soil. On this particular Thanksgiving, both families gathered in one house. There was food and warmth, and the easy noise of people who are comfortable with each other. Adults talked. Men watched the game. And the children, two little girls, both around 6 years old, moved through the house like small storms, full of energy and laughter and the specific joy of being completely free. After dinner, the girls asked to go outside, just to the front yard, just for a little while. The adults said yes. They always say yes. There was a man in that house who believed he was prepared for anything. He was built like the walls of his own home, wide, solid, immovable. He was a carpenter by trade, a survivalist by nature, and a man of deep, unshakable religious faith. He had a basement full of canned goods, tools, and supplies for the kind of disasters most people only imagine. He was the kind of man who believed that the world was dangerous, and that a real man's job was to stand between that danger and the people he loved. His name was Keller Dover. Keller loved his family the way he did everything else, with intensity and without softness. His son was older, nearly grown, but his daughter, Anna, was 6 years old, small and bright and full of the kind of light that makes grown men feel like the world is still worth something. The other father was different in almost every way. He was quieter, gentler, the kind of man who thought before he spoke, who gave people the benefit of the doubt, who carried his emotions inward rather than outward. His name was Franklin Birch. His daughter, Joy, was Anna's closest friend. The two girls were rarely apart. Franklin and Keller were not the same kind of man, but their children shared everything. And on this Thanksgiving, for a few hours at least, the two families shared the same warmth, the same table, the same sense that life was ordinary and good. Then the girls didn't come back inside, and nothing was ever ordinary again. At first there was confusion, then there was searching, then there was the specific, chest-hollowing panic that every parent carries somewhere in the back of their mind. The fear they never say out loud because saying it might make it real. Keller drove through the streets. Franklin called names until his voice broke. The mothers stood on the porch in the cold, watching the street, waiting for two small figures to appear out of the dark. They never did. The police were called, and with them came a man who would carry this case on his shoulders for the days that followed. He was a detective, quiet, focused, the kind of man who seemed always slightly exhausted, always slightly apart from the people around him, as if he had seen too much of the world's darkness to ever fully stand in its light. He had tattoos on his neck and hands, and eyes that moved slowly over a room and missed nothing. His solve rate was nearly perfect. His name was Loki. Detective Loki arrived at the scene and began working the way good investigators do, carefully, without assumptions, pulling on every thread no matter how thin. And one thread caught his attention almost immediately. Earlier that day, a neighbor had seen an old RV parked near the street where the girls had been playing. Rusted, out of place, the kind of vehicle you notice once and then forget because you have no reason to remember it. They found it, and inside the vehicle, they found a young man. He was in his mid-20s, but something about him felt younger, frozen, as if some part of his development had simply stopped at a certain point and never continued. He couldn't maintain a conversation. He gave fragmented, confusing answers. He rocked slightly when he sat still. His eyes moved like a person listening to something no one else could hear. His name was Alex Jones. He was brought in for questioning. Loki sat across from him and asked careful questions. Alex gave nothing useful in return, not because he was playing games, but because something was simply missing from the way he connected to the world around him. Without evidence, without a single concrete piece of proof, the law gave them no choice. They let him go. Keller Dover was in the parking lot when Alex walked out, and as Alex passed him, close enough to whisper, he leaned toward Keller and said something. Something so quiet that only Keller could hear it. Something that lasted only a second, but that 1 second rewrote everything. Keller didn't sleep that night. He drove through the dark and thought about what Alex had said, and the more he thought about it, the more certain he became. Not the careful certainty of evidence, the burning certainty of a father, the kind that doesn't ask permission. He made a decision that no judge would ever approve, that no decent man should ever make. He found Alex Jones. He took him, and he brought him to an old apartment building he owned, a place that was abandoned and forgotten and completely isolated from the world. He locked Alex inside and told no one except Franklin. Franklin was horrified. He stood in that cold, dark hallway and looked at what his friend had done and felt everything inside him resist. He was not that kind of man. He did not believe in this. But joy was still missing, and Keller had a way of filling every room with the weight of his conviction, of making every other option feel like surrender. So Franklin didn't stop him. He told himself it was temporary, that it would work, that this was the only way. He told himself a lot of things. What happened in that building over the following days was not justice. It was not interrogation. It was a man coming completely apart, day by day, hour by hour, driven by love and fear into a place where those two things had become indistinguishable from violence. Keller questioned Alex. Alex responded with fragments, with confusion, with words that almost made sense and then didn't. And Keller escalated, because stopping meant admitting that it wasn't working, and admitting that meant facing the possibility that his certainty had been wrong from the beginning. That was a place Keller Dover could not go. While Keller descended further into darkness, Loki was working. He followed threads that other investigators might have dismissed. a local priest with something to confess, a body discovered in a basement, a man who had dedicated years to something sinister and had never been caught, drawings of mazes found in multiple places, connected to multiple disappearances over many years, each thread leading not to a clear answer, but to the outline of something much larger and much older than two missing girls on Thanksgiving Day. Loki worked without stopping. He carried the case the way he carried everything, inward, privately, with a weight that never left his face. He also noticed Keller, the way Keller appeared at the station with aggression that didn't fit a grieving father, the way Keller asked questions that sounded less like a parent and more like someone managing a situation. Loki was a detective. He noticed everything, but noticing is not the same as proving. And he had two missing children and a maze of evidence that kept leading him deeper into the unknown. He kept moving. Here is where the story turns completely inside out. Loki followed his evidence to a house, quiet neighborhood, ordinary street, an older couple living the kind of life that no one looks at twice, a husband, a wife, a house full of silence. He went inside, and what he found there rewrote everything. The woman's name was Holly Jones. She was Alex's mother, or rather, the woman who had taken him when he was a child and raised him in captivity, slowly breaking down his mind over years of abuse and isolation. Alex was not a predator. Alex was a victim, a child who had been stolen decades ago and kept, and eventually used, sent into the world like a shadow, like bait, close enough to notice, but impossible to connect to anything, because Holly Jones had been doing this for a long time. She believed, with complete and absolute conviction, that she was at war, a war against God, against faith, against hope itself. She believed that by creating suffering, by stealing children and destroying families, she was striking against the divine order of things. It was a mission, a theology of darkness that had consumed her entirely. She had taken children before Anna and Joy. Some of them had never been found. Keller Dover had spent days in that building, convinced he was breaking the person responsible. He had been torturing an innocent man. The real answer had been living on a quiet street the entire time. Loki moved fast. He searched the house. In a hidden space, sealed behind walls in silence, he found one of the girls, Joy, barely conscious, barely alive, but breathing. He got her out. He arrested Holly, but Anna was not there. Keller, learning the truth too late, went to Holly's house himself, and Holly, cornered, with nothing left to protect except her secret, shot him and put him somewhere no one would think to look, a pit beneath the earth, narrow and dark and cold, the same kind of place she had used before, a place built specifically to make people disappear. Loki found Holly. He stopped her. He got the information he needed, and he found Anna, alive, hidden in one final sealed space beneath the property. Anna was saved, but Keller was still in the ground. The final scene of this film does not give you the resolution you want. There is no triumphant moment, no music swelling as a hero walks away, no scene of a father holding his daughter in the light. There is only Loki, standing alone in the dark outside the property, the investigation technically over, the case technically closed. And then he hears something, faint, almost impossible, rising up from beneath the earth like a last breath, trying to become a sound. A whistle. Small, weak, but real. The camera cuts to black. You never see what happens next. And that choice, the deliberate, painful, unresolved ending, is the film's final act of honesty. Because the story was never really about whether Anna survived. It was never really about whether Loki solved the case. It was always about Keller Dover, a man who loved his daughter with everything he had, a man who built his entire identity around being the protector, the provider, the one who stands between his family and the darkness of the world. And when the darkness came anyway, when the system felt too slow and too limited and too human, he chose to become something else. He built a prison for a man he believed was guilty, and he ended up in a prison of his own. This is what the film leaves you with. Not an answer, a mirror. Because Keller Dover was not a monster. He was a father. He was afraid. And in his fear, he made choices that took him further and further from the man he believed himself to be, until there was almost nothing left of that man at all. The whistle rises from the dark, and somewhere above the ground, a detective stops walking and listens. What would you have done differently? Would you have waited? Would you have trusted the system, trusted that truth has a way of finding the surface, even when every hour felt like a betrayal of the person you loved most? Or would you have done exactly what Keller did? And if you would have,